hope you're having as much fun as I am. I love this stuff. It's so exciting. And we are just at the end of discussing the DOM. This is going to be the last lecture, and then you're going to go, I know what the DOM is. And we've looked at the fact that the DOM is not your HTML code. We've looked at the fact that it's not what you see in the browser. And now I just want to prove that it's not always what you see in DevTools either, although the DevTools element inspector is the closest approximation we have to the DOM. Enough said, let's get coding. I want to create a very, very simple HTML file. Let me create a very basic HTML template. And we're just going to have a head and a body. And within the body, we're going to have a h1 tag. And let's call it Pseudo Elements. Pseudo elements are weird. And let's have a paragraph tab with just some lorem ipsum, some random text. Okay, what else can we do? On our h1 tag, we can have a class of heading, just so we can identify it. And let's render this to our page and see what it looks like. There we go, nothing special at all. But what if we wanted to now add pseudo elements? How do they work? As an example, let's maybe add something before the h1 tag. So we can see here our heading says pseudo elements are weird. I want to insert an asterisk, let's say, before the pseudo, before the P, the letter P. I want to insert an asterisk. And let's do something on our paragraph tag. Let's change the first line of color to red. And then let's add something after the paragraph. And why not add a smiley face? Just because we can. So that's what I want to do. Let's go back to our coding editor. And here we are. Let's add a pseudo element. But firstly, before we do, let me just bring up on the screen what a pseudo element is. A pseudo element is used to style a specific part of an element. For example, it can be used to style the first letter line of an element. It can be used to insert content before or after the content of an element. And how does the code look? Well, we can see here on the screen, we have to choose a selector, and then we use a double colon. Then we use the pseudo element we want to implement, and then we just implement the property value. Okay, so you'll see how this works. I'm going to show you now. But just bear in mind that we now use a double colon notation. This in fact replaced the single colon notation for pseudo elements in CSS3. So it was just an attempt by the W3C, which is an organization that just governs these things, to distinguish between pseudo elements and pseudo classes. Okay. Anyway, that's just a bit of FYI. Okay, enough theory. Let's just get into it. Let's start styling our page and seeing these pseudo elements in action. So within our head section, let's create a style section for our styles. And obviously we can just use normal CSS selectors. So here we want to style our h1 tag with class heading. And yes, we didn't actually need to do the class of heading because we only have one h1 tag. I just wanted to show you how you could implement it if you wanted to. Now, do you remember what we want to do? We wanted to insert an asterisk, aka content, before our header content. So let's use the double colon notation for a pseudo element. And you can even see here my text editor is giving me hints. We want to use the before pseudo element. That's a keyword that we can give to the browser so the parser knows when it hits this that this is a pseudo element. And of course the next step here is to give key value pairs. So the key here is content, and we're wanting to add an asterisk. So there we have it. There is our h1 heading before. This is a pseudo element. Strictly speaking, as I mentioned before, it should not form part of the DOM. But let's see what happens. Let's save our file and let's go back to our browser. Let's have a look. So we're in our browser and there you go. You see that very beautiful asterisk. And if we inspect this page, what are we going to see? So if we open up this h1 tag within our elements tab, look at that. We actually see the pseudo element before. But what's very interesting is that remember how I said it's not technically part of the DOM? That's right. And what that means is that JavaScript, because it's not part of the DOM, it can't access this pseudo element. So that's just a bit of FYI. So that's the pseudo element before. Okay. I want to show you another pseudo element now. Remember what I said? I want us to change the first line of text color, in this case, let's just make it red. That's a pseudo element. What do you think specifically will happen or should happen to the DOM? Well, let's have a look. Great, now we're wanting to style our paragraph. What I'm wanting to do is we're wanting to change the very first line to red using a pseudo element. So let's grab our paragraph. And now we're going to use the double colon notation, and it's called first line. And yes, we're wanting to just change the color to red. What do you think will happen now? Well, yes, obviously the first line of text will be the one color red. But what do you think will happen to your DOM? Well, let me ask you this. Do you think the DOM should have these pseudo elements? No, we just said that strictly speaking, the DOM should only consist of your HTML. It should only be built from your HTML. It should exclude the CSS arm or any style related code. So strictly speaking, your DOM should not include this pseudo element first line. If we go back to our page, why is it not working? Oh man, of course, I shouldn't have my red in, it's not text, it's actually a keyword. So there we go. If we go back to our page now, you can see the first line is red. But what is super interesting is if I open up this paragraph element, we do not see the pseudo element. And my awesome dear students, this is the point I'm trying to make. This exception, this weird little rule, only applies to the before and after pseudo elements. Strictly speaking, the DOM correctly, this elements inspector correctly treats the pseudo element first line. So it's weird. The first line's not included in the DOM, which it shouldn't be, but then the befores and afters are. And to prove the after one, let's add a smiley face after our paragraph text. So let's go back to our text editor. Let us now access or style our paragraph again. We're using double colon notation for pseudo elements, and now we want the after property. And I'm just wanting our content to be an image. And I've actually got an image in this exact same folder just called smiley, and it's a PNG. If we save that, we go back to our browser, and there is our very cute little smiley face.
Yay!
And if I open up this p tag, you can see that we've got the after pseudo element. Whew, we have done an incredible amount. How awesome is this? So you've come a long way. We've dealt a lot with what the DOM is not. And we can kind of see that the closest approximation to the DOM is this inspector element, but it's not quite exactly the DOM. And we've seen why. We've just looked at one example of the before and after pseudo elements.